Problem's going to be with this episode is there's so much to cover.
Much better toe cap. It's interesting that it's got the Korum, the first generation Korum on. The random shit in there.
Hey guys, welcome back. Today's vlog is thanks to John Bartender 3451, I think it was. He was asking about a little bit of basics on Splitboard, setups, Splitboard tech, what to buy, what the differences are. So I'm going to go through a very simple, so don't start freaking out on me, I know how tech we can get. We're going to really simplify Splitboarding today, especially for people that are going to be newer to it. If you're already guiding and you've been on a Splitboard for 10 years, it's probably, we're not going to get much from this. Maybe you will, who knows. But this is for the intro, folks that are just kind of getting into it. So yeah, we're going to start out with the different types of bindings.
So I think what's easiest today is to talk about, I'm going to stick with 3 different platforms, so to speak. So we're going to look at the Spark platform, which I have here, which is based on pucks and a sliding system. We're going to talk about Korum, which is a little more in depth, really cool. I've got those over there, and hopefully I'll be able to set them up on a binding so I can show how that attaches. And then we're going to also get into union setup, which I'll move these rovers for a sec here. The unions are set up on a proprietary disc that they've also come up with, and there's 2 versions of that. So there's going to be a pin system, which we actually still use a fair bit. Priced really well. It's simple. I quite like it. And then they came out with the chargers, which has a locking mechanism as opposed to using an old school style pin to lock in place. Some people frown on the pin because that's technology that's going back to Volet days. I don't really have a problem with it. You might get a micro amount of movement out of this, but really it wasn't much. And again, it's application. If you're professional and you're out there doing, your peak bagging, yeah, maybe you're not considering this, and maybe we might even be talking about phantoms and a whole other thing which we're not talking about today, to be clear. We're not getting into the high-end splitboarding. We're talking recreational splitboarding here. Getting out, having fun. These 3 platforms, to me, this is what we should be talking about. Burton works with Spark. They get the base plates from Spark and then build their own system around it. So Spark is Spark and Burton. Union will have its platform, and then Korum will have its platform. That's what I think we should stick with for the time being while we discuss getting into splitboarding. Also, just because I have these out, the Expedition series from Union encompasses a lot of backcountry stuff. One of the things they make is the Rover. This is a approach ski. Thick skin. These are really cool. Same thing, you'll actually have your binding setup maybe on a solid board. A lot of guys just love their solid board. They're not going to ride a splitty. So you'd approach with this. Drift also makes one with a fixed platform for climbing, super lightweight, carbon top sheet, again, thick skin. So the application with these 2, we're not going to deep dive this today, but if you're pow surfing, which is when I tend to use these, or if you just love that splitboard, whatever your splitboard is, you're not going to, deviate from that, then there's actually a quiver disc like this that'll mount right onto your standard solid board, and that's what you'll ride down on, and you will climb with a union binding system. On the way up, no problem like that. These go in your backpack, either or, and boom, you ride your solid board down, or if you're pow surfing, you pow surf down. These guys on either side of the backpack, boom, away you go. The first setup we'll talk about is the Spark platform. Hylas is probably around here somewhere. Hylas is one of my shop managers. Hylas rides these a bit more than I do.
Yeah.
What splitty are you going to ride this year?
Something Korum.
Pencil,
Yeah.
maybe.
Pencil would
Get
be
the
nice.
Pencil 6.4 would be
Yeah.
a good one. I need
Go
to get a new
longboarding.
Splitboard this year too, so that's another thing. We'll go through the process of me picking what I'm going to end up riding this year. Very recreational riding, Kootenai Pass, things like that, Lightning Strike Cabin.
Hopefully it
Similar to
snows
what
early.
High does.
Yeah.
With the Sparks, you get this little plate here, which just makes it really easy. Like once you pull everything out of the box, you're going to have your 2 pucks. You're going to have your plate. You lock your plate in. I've already tightened these, but that's how you make the adjustment. You'll figure out your stance angle. And Hylas, why do you usually use these ones?
I like the all metal kind of base plate of a Spark. They slide on and off easy no matter what.
Durability, yeah.
Durability, you know.
I'll show you how these slide.
As far as the pucks go, you set it once and you forget it for the whole season generally, which I do enjoy.
They're always a bit stiff, but there's, you know, zero play.
Zero play.
And this is a older set of the Burtons, but
yeah, I like how solid it is under here, especially when you're walking up.
Yep.
Any side hilling, the binding's not budging at all. The 2 puck system just works really well. You never have to change it.
so I'll be devil's advocate a little bit here. You've got your 2 pucks. I know some people get excited about what we're looking at with a Splitboard too is we want a good bond. So here we have the Korum 2.0s. These are fantastic. I really do like these. That when you're purchasing, you're going to be thinking about everything you're buying. So we call these on the nose whale clips. That's your Korum whale clip. Again, these are durable, simple, quite nice. They make new versions, which are definitely worth hitting their website to check out. But the 2.0 is what I'm actually most familiar with. I use these quite often. And again, that's pulling the bond together, pulling the board together. So we have a bond here, and then our binding bonds us here. One unique thing with Union, where they've kind of done a triple bond, where the disc is actually adding another bond itself, and then the binding is going around there and attaching and clamping. It's kind of 2 schools of thought as to what is the better version. I'll keep my opinion out of it, but there's, you know, they're all achieving the same thing with, you know, different ways about going about it. Korum as well, I wish I had a board set up, because they have 2 aluminum discs, and those 2 discs do something similar to what Union does.
Yeah,
It's
it pulls
actually,
the boards.
it's bonding right there, and then when the binding system's on, the Korums, through that, their adjustments right through here. You open this, and you'll see those 2 guys pop out. That's actually what's locking you into their binding system. Those little guys there are moving around. So it locks in here, here, there, and there. Really good bond, really lightweight. I mean, Jeremy Jones, Worm, greatest snowboarder ever. Worm uses those all the time, and if you caught any of the blog he did last year, it was epic. Go watch those. I'll try to make sure that I actually put
Inyo.
a few down below.
Inyo and Worm.
Yeah, the 2 of them
They were awesome when they were here too, in Nelson. That was cool.
Yeah, no, they
were
were
getting
great.
after it.
Took Morrison up to our other the other guy that's filmmaking. Today we have Fitz behind the camera, which is going back to old school when we started this vlog. So Fitz, I'm stoked you're around again, and thanks for filming. Morrison got out with those guys, which is really cool, and it looked bloody cold.
I wonder if he can feel his toes yet.
I know, that was awesome. But again, those guys were splitboarding. So if you look at what they were riding, I think Worm was on a hovercraft, Inyo was on a split Stratos.
Yeah, he rides that butterfly crazy light one.
Yeah, and that
too.
new one too.
Yeah,
and those are I'm kind of playing with. Maybe I've had a Libtech Split BRD. I've had a hover, old hover 1.0, and then I got the Solution, which I rode for a long time. So I'm trying to figure out. We've retired the Solution. That's going into the demo fleet here. I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to ride next. Maybe a Korum as well.
I could see you on a hovercraft.
Morrison rides that Mega Split, which that thing is fantastic. That one's definitely a little more freestyle driven, which makes sense. A little more centered stance on that. I'm going to be, I think, looking for something more old school where I can get right back seat, and I think that's why a hovercraft might make more sense there.
You're not riding switch too much or landing switch?
No, not at all.
On the Splitboard?
And that's
but
something...
Then you look at Garrett, and he's landing switch on the hovercraft.
On a hovercraft. So maybe I could.
You can do it.
Yeah, maybe I could. That's also, I think we should get into talking, you know, with splitboarding, I keep talking about length of snowboards in general, how I've been kind of pushing people to size up. I always did that with splitboards. I never, ever wanted to see someone, you know, the weight ranges, luckily with most of these brands, are expanded a bit wider, so I wouldn't be on a 6'5" like what I have here, but I do often ride a 6'1" to 6'4".
You gotta think, when you're out splitboarding, you weigh more. You got your
100%.
bag on, you got all the stuff in there, everything you need, so you should ride a few centimeters bigger than your resort
Exactly.
board.
Exactly. I probably have 30 pounds I'm carrying around
totally.
with me easily.
Yeah.
That's another thing. So add that to your weight when you're talking about it, or just size up. Like I say, if your resort board's a 56, for example, I'd hope to see you on a 59 to even 62 when it comes to splitboard. They maneuver really easy. Climbing is the only time where if you're really trying to turn a ski around where you might run into something that drives you a little bit crazy, but it won't be a big deal. And the advantage of having that surface area going down is going to be huge. So length of board, that's what we'll say on that. The shapes are going to matter a lot. These pencils, you know, taper, anything like that, when you get into some taper, it's going to be quicker, it's going to act like a fish. And a lot of volume up front, so sometimes there you might ride a tad smaller. In this shape, I would like to see a 59 split. Korum doesn't make one yet. If you guys are watching, I really hope you do, because my options for a pencil, which I love this board, I think was only a 6'4", wasn't it?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so it's, I don't have a
That's
lot of
pushing
options.
it. That's pushing
And
it.
that for me, because there's so much volume up front, that is pushing it for me. I'm 150 pounds, that's gonna be too much. So, boys, if you could build a 5'9", that'd be great. Maybe that'd be the one I'd ride. But back to the Spark setup. So we'll keep talking about Spark. The other thing, there's often some people get a little worried about the metal with foot fatigue. These guys have come up with at Spark, and you'll see it on their website, we'll have it on ours, a really rad foam insert sticker, so to speak, that goes on there that has quite a bit of EVA to it. Gives you a lot of compression dampening and kind of remedies that. Hylas, do you have one on your...
I thought I did. There's a pair kicking around here somewhere with the EV foam.
Yeah, but you'll see it. We'll have it on our site soon enough. And speaking of websites, that's a whole other gambit of conversation too. This isn't stuff you necessarily want to buy online. You need to get intimate with this, and you need to deal with somebody that does have experience. So, you know, unfortunately, we're seeing some websites right now where brand X is like 50 off of everything, and it's often for a reason, and it's not necessarily gear you want to be grabbing if it's always on sale. So be conscious of the brands you're purchasing, and you really do want to interact with people. So what we're doing more through our website too, if you're looking to buy from us, we'll FaceTime with you. You can grab my cell number, and we can, like we're doing right now, take you through setups, take you through some ideas, and really, if you don't have a snowboard shop in your zone, which I'm finding more and more in the US with a lot of our customers down there, we're happy to be your snowboard shop. So that's why we're doing this and trying to carry on with this stuff. And a quick FaceTime for 20 minutes with you, we can get people dialed out really, really well and make sure you're actually intimate with the product you're purchasing and dealing with people that are actually using the gear instead of just buying stuff online.
Big thing with Splitboards is we always try to not just set up the split for you, but show you how to set it up. Because when you're in the backcountry, we're not there. You need to know how to tear it apart, put it back together,
100%.
do whatever you need to do. So it's really crucial to do that yourself with our help.
Yeah, being intimate with the product means you'll be able to get yourself out of the woods if there's, something goes wrong, which is rare. This stuff is really well engineered, but the few times that something happens, you'll know how to MacGyver it, fix something, and kind of go from there. Yeah. So the function of it, the simple few things, I've showed you how we kind of slide this on and engage for riding mode. Climbing mode, we'll keep talking about the sparks for the time being. You'll see these two pins here. Those guys will just lock into place, which makes it a lot easier. So they lock into place, pop that guy down. Now we're climbing. It's that simple. And I'll take these apart shortly, but your skis will be apart. You flop them across as opposites, You don't want to climb like this, you'll actually switch them around. And then we also have what's known as our lifter, riser, whatever you want to call it. This is a 2-stage, which is quite cool that Spark does. Union has a single, which was kind of, we found to be, you know, you can sort of manipulate where it sits. You can get a couple levels out of it. And then I've even seen some guys throw the volet one on those boards as well, because with Union, you actually don't need to put any plate down here. So we've been able to have 3 stages if you add a volet one too, which is quite cool with that. Korum has a mounting system not on the binding, but the Korum guys actually have it mounted to the board, and it's 2 lifters right off the board.
But hey, with the Unions, it's like the perfect height where if you feel like you need that second rise, you probably should do a switchback and keep, you know, keep climbing. You don't need to be going straight uphill. Make it easy on yourself. Do a second lap.
Yeah,
reserve your energy.
Sure. Having the one is definitely always been enough. Perfect. For me anyway.
I rarely go to my big one on the Sparks even. Yeah.
I've used these a lot. These were mine, and I never had complaints about just having the one lifter.
There's that foam.
There we go.
Foam footbed. So it's substantial, sticks right on, keeps your feet really warm, which I found was nice. The metal tends to draw the heat out, right? So that's nice, insulates, and it makes it feel like a normal binding. Gives you a little bit of side to side, which is really nice to have. You don't need all metal under your foot all the time. So that's a big upgrade. I think it was less than 40 bucks for a set, which was awesome. So yeah, no, that's, and they did the new risers this year too, with the little plastic pieces and the actual whammy bar.
Yep.
That makes it way easier with a pull to flick it up, and it just really pops into position nicely. So yeah, Sparks. I've had these for 4 or 5 years now, as you can see by the scratches, and they are still fully holding up. I'll ride them again this year.
And now we'll kind of talk about the Unions a little more. The Unions, no metal base plates. Really, really high-end materials. These flex. So these feel like your standard binding that's on your regular board. That's why I like them. Full transparency, you'll get a little bit of lateral play when you're climbing because there's no metal. So of course there's gonna be a little bit of movement. It's not a big deal. And the advantage of the descent, riding down, how good these feel, either version, especially the new ones. Yeah, with these, the descent really feels like your standard binding system. That's why I see a lot of snowboard guides going to this setup, actually, because they're not often in split mode. They need to have a split board as part of their occupation, just in case there's an incident and they have to get into split mode and get to a rescue or something like that. But for the most part, they're just riding. So I'm seeing more and more guides actually using this system because of how nice it rides. Fairly easy as we clamp down here. We drop it onto the plate, spin it around, and quite simple. See how well this was set up from the last rental. There we go. Boom, that guy locks down our pins in, and this isn't moving. Like, that's not moving. So I quite like this setup. We use it as our rental in the shop quite often too. Just ease of use, especially for people that are new to this. This is a really simple system. Gets you out there. I mean, everything else Union's used on these, I'm really stoked with. So with all of them, you want to have negative forward lean when you're climbing, and then obviously you want to have your forward lean when you're riding. So this one's just like a quick throw it forward and away you go. Similar here, it's all the way back, push it forward, it locks into place, and this you can adjust fore and aft to give yourself more forward lean. Korum has a cool way of going about it too, where you just leave it like that sideways for your climbing, and then boom, now we've got about 18 degrees of forward lean for the way down. So everyone has a version of that, but that is just something we need to talk about as well. You're always climbing with negative forward lean because your stride it's not going to force your quads down, force your knees down, and burn out your quads, so to speak, which has happened to me on a long, say you're doing a long straight trek. You don't want any forward lean. You want to be able to stand up straight and just cruise along like you're hiking. With splitboarding, we want to use the least amount of energy as we're climbing, and long strides, and you're never really lifting your feet up. Be really conscious of that too. You're just kind of, so I always call it the zombie walk. You're just cruising along, right? High,
Yeah,
like
totally.
You don't want to. John Buffrey taught me, like, if you're sweating a ton, you're doing it wrong. You know, and I learned that at a young age, to just not try to pound so much, or if you're lifting up a lot, that really takes a lot of energy. So something to be conscious of there too with the split boards and with your technique. But we'll do, you know, down the road, we'll do something a little more in depth. See what we can, what footage we can show you guys of how we sort of zombie walk.
Jeremy Jones always was saying when he was in, he was saying it's not about how fast you go, it's about how little you stop. And I'm sure it's great. He's probably passed by some dudes on the skin track, and then they're digging around trying to drop layers, put them in their bags, and there he goes,
Yeah,
right past him. Slow and steady,
Yeah,
no
consistent,
sweat,
consistent.
heart rate stays low, and yeah, and you're 100% the ride down, which is the important part.
Yeah, yeah, no,
The fun
absolutely.
part.
So
Yeah.
splitting your board, I showed you how the clips worked to the Korums really quickly, had the lever. Unions sort of scissor into each other and lock into place right there, which is also nice and gives you a good solid bond. Like the old school, there was an old Valet one that scissored as well. This is sort of an updated version of that, and then your whale clip goes on. So you split them, and then we're actually going to climb like this. We're going to switch them to opposites. You won't clank around as much. Keeps the side cut radius where you need it if you're side hilling at all, so you can kind of grip in and grab and continue on your way. You're going to have one single side cut radii, which is basically just straight where they cut the board, but you'll use this one for your gripping mostly. You know, you'll use the actual side cut. What's really cool with Jones is they've used a mellow magnet traction, which gives you even more contact. So kudos to those guys. I do like that they've done that on split boards. It's hard to see on the other one that I had out, but it can't be cheap to set up that, and it's really, really quite cool. And there is just a subtle magnet traction if that one's from that era, which I think it is. Okay, but yeah, I know the new ones have it. It's pretty rad.
It holds it together too.
Well,
Keeps
exactly.
it in the right spot.
Gives you another bond.
Yeah,
really. Yeah.
It's awesome. And you notice it when you ride a Jones. That it feels like a solid board when it's set up properly. And you're riding down, there's no chatter. It's not like the old days of splitboarding where you could tell that you're riding a splitboard on the way down.
Oh man,
It's gotten really good.
like back when I started at BALDFACE would have been in 2000, I think. So I got a 166 from Craig Kelly because that's all there was. And back then I was probably 140 pounds. So I'm on a 166 with the old. Can you grab me that old plate from? JG gave me a few of these old plates from the original Burton system, which was quite unique. Totally different than anything out today, and it's a bummer they didn't continue with this, but I think it was quite expensive to do something like this. So this plate, you actually mounted a binding to the top of it, and it's missing a couple components, but this whole thing would open up. See, it would splay like that, and then it would lock into a system like that for climbing. And then also this little disc here would grab your board, and that's what would lock you in for descent. These were wild and kind of problematic for a while. Craig showed me something really cool where we were using these little washers to elevate the disc, and it made this a lot easier to clamp down and powder. But back to the sizing, there was no options. It was Valet. Burton was making one model. Wasn't much out there. So I was on a 166. And I was in my 20s, so I could hammer with that thing, but that's just all there was. Going forward now, the amount of options you have is crazy, and that's where we kind of want to help everybody narrow it down and, you know, ask questions in the comments, because now there's so much out there that we got to kind of funnel it into, okay, what's making sense. Volet stuff, oh man, it was heavy. So you were working hard out there, and it's just good to see that everything with composites now, with new designs, everything's so much lighter.
Oh, yeah.
It's so much lighter.
Even people still roll in sometimes with the old Volet plates with the normal bindings mounted on top, not even splitboard bindings. So you're sitting like risered up, right up, like Mark Fawcett would carve on a carving board. Big risers, and yeah, old plates, a pin, and you know, people still make it work. But, yeah, it'd be
digging through the vault there, but we don't have any more of those old ones. So
we should almost go. Buffrey has a couple really old split boards at the museum here in town.
Well, John arguably was one of the could have been the first guy to put together a split board.
And maybe some guys in Europe were doing it around the same time.
And the Volet guys were in the mix too, but
a lot of history in Nelson with splitboarding.
Oh yeah. Back to figuring out what's going to be best for you. Like I say, we're going to stick to those 3 platforms. The Korum, unfortunately, we just don't have one set up right now, but their website's really good. You see what Worm's doing on his. I mean, everything has an advantage to it, and maybe some slight disadvantages. So you're going to want to figure out what your application is and what your terrain is. Most of us are going out for powder. That's why I'm not worried about you going longer, because for the most part, if you're out splitboarding, you are seeking powder. That's usually what you're up to.
Not many schemos around here.
No, not too many.
Yeah, no one's trying to King of the Mountain on Strava.
Exactly. Some other quick tips just off the top of my head. You know, we haven't talked much about skins, but making sure that you're waxing your splitboard often is going to help you with removing your skin on and off throughout the day, so the glues aren't sticking as much. If you find you're getting really sticky or residue on your base, you likely did not wax the board enough. So that's something to think about. Skins have come a real long way too, where now they're a lot thinner. I'm really in love with actually the Volet. What are the green ones called again?
Hyperglide,
the Hyperglides.
Yeah.
Those are fantastic.
They're great.
Union has a really, really good collab going where they're, again, super thin, super light. Montana.
Yeah.
High mohair
company.
content.
Yeah.
And
most of them are Swiss. The mohair.
Exactly.
High-end
and
skins.
We've been really liking those. Thinner, much thinner, so again, lighter weight. A lot of what we're going to think about when buying stuff too is the overall weight of everything we're going to be purchasing too. That's going to play into it. We'll quickly cover boots. Boots, that's a whole other episode too, and I'm probably rambling on too long already. But you're going to be looking at, brand X might have too much forward lean. You are looking for a boot that's moderately relaxed. You also want a system where you have 2 zones, because when you're climbing, you're actually pretty chill up here for the most part. My style of climbing anyway. You don't want a lot tightened up top until you start the descent. Looking at sole material is going to matter a little, but really that ability to flex backwards is key. So when you're doing long strides, you want to make sure there's some relief. So there's certain boots out there, without getting too into it. You want to look at how they forward flex. Articulating cuffs are pretty key, although this one doesn't have it. The ones that have it are free flex a little bit better, and they're good for that. And then having that ability to either be zeroed and have a little bit of relief backwards, I think is pretty important with your boots. So keep that in mind. A lot of these guys have quiver discs, so Korum's pretty cool too, like with the Unions, where you can actually buy this one set of bindings for your season. This is your binding for the resort because it's going to go on your solid board. It's also your binding for your split board. You don't have to buy anything separate with Union or Korum. They both come with everything needed. When you look at the Spark platform, you are purchasing a set of either Volet pucks or the Spark pucks, so keep that in mind. Canadian pricing varies, but when you're looking at a split board set up in Canada, we're usually about $1,400 roughly and up. US, that's probably going to work to about $1,000. You should be able to get a moderately good starter setup. Yeah, guys, if there's anything else I haven't really covered, again, this is just quick vlog style, so, leave any questions down below in the comment section. Again, just kind of getting us ready for winter. So any other questions, like I say, throw them down below, and thanks for hanging out with us. We'll see you next time.